Hello, fellow spooks. How are you? I hope that you're doing amazing. My name is Rachel, and this is Rachel Unabridged, where I talk about books and horror. Today, we are going to be taking a look at my 2022 reading challenge for Goodreads. This is part 2. We're going to be looking at the last 6 months. If you want to see what I read the first 6 months of 2022, I'm going to put like a thing. Is it over here? Maybe it's over here. I'm going to put a link for the video somewhere where you can find it. So check that out if you want to see what I read the first bit of 2022. And let's just jump right into it because the last video was almost an hour and I'm so sorry. And boom, welcome to my laptop again. Last time we looked at the first 6 months of 2022, and this time we're going to look at the last 6 months, but I'm going to kind of omit December because I already talked about what I read in December. So if you would like to see what I read and hear my thoughts on the different books, I'm going to leave a thing up in the cards so you can check that out. So I'm cozy and I made myself a cup of tea. This time I did Earl Grey. It is one of my favorites. So I'm ready to talk about some books with you guys. The first book that I read in July was Skinwrapper by kozeniewski. I hope that I pronounced that right. This was a sci-fi horror novella. I'm pretty sure I actually got it from the author. It was part of a group read for one of the groups that I'm joined to on Goodreads. It is a novella and it's like a prequel to his larger series, so I'm just gonna kind of leave it as space pirates attack the ship that the protagonist is on and things happen. I liked it pretty good. It was an enjoyable read. I gave it 3 stars. The next book that I read is The Carrow Hunt by Darcy Coates. This is actually one of my favorites by her. I gave it 4 stars. She writes a lot of this kind of like fluffy light horror, and I like to read her stuff every so often. It's kind of a palate cleanser between some of the like crazier stuff that I read sometimes. But this one is supernatural horror like most of her stuff, and it is about a woman named Remy who is a tour guide for this haunted location. I think it originally started as a house, and then through the years it became a hotel and some other stuff like that. So she's the tour guide there, and then she becomes involved in this investigation into the ghostly occurrences at the house. And like I said, this was one of my favorites by Darcy Coates. I really liked the characters. They were a lot of fun, especially Bernard. I loved him so much, like that, I don't know, crunchy on the outside and like soft on the inside kind of character. I always love them. I also read Terrifying Tales to Tell at Night. This is a collection of stories. I think that there's one by Stephen King in here. There's one by Neil Gaiman. That was all compiled by Stephen Jones, not to be mistaken for Stephen Graham Jones. This was a really good collection. I gave it 4 stars. I kind of just like stumbled across it on my Kobo and I was like, oh, this seems really interesting. So I bought it for like $1 and it ended up being really, really good. A lot of the like vibe of this book reminded me of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which I loved growing up. But this set of stories kind of felt a little more adult. Like you could enjoy them whether you are, like a middle grade child to, all the way through teenage years to adulthood. There was a really good story called The Man Who Drew Cats, and that one was my favorite for sure. I also read the Discourses of Epictetus. I think I said in another video on my channel, I read a little bit of nonfiction every now and then, and I like to read like some of the classical philosophy works and stuff because I think from a historical and also I guess like philosophical position, it's really interesting to read and kind of see what people were like back then. I gave this one 3 stars. I also read Come Closer by Sara Gran. This is a horror novella about possession. I'm not really going to give a summary because it's so short. I don't want to give anything away. but I really, really liked it. I felt like the whole thing was presented really, really well. The pacing was great. I was not bored for a second in this story. I actually read the whole thing in one day, and it was actually really scary. There was a lot of like implications in this story that I found to be pretty terrifying, so I would recommend it. I gave it 4 stars. I also read Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. This was my first time reading Eric LaRocca, and I haven't quite decided if I want to read any more by him because I wasn't a huge fan of this one. As you can see, I gave it 3 stars. This is a horror novella about 2 women who meet on a message board and start building a horrifying relationship. And while I liked the concept itself, I just didn't really like the execution. I didn't like the format of the story, like the way he told the story. So that was what took it down from what could have been like a 4 or 5 star read for me down to 3. I also read In a Grove by Akutagawa Ryuunosuke, and this is a short story translated from Japanese. I actually got it free in this collection that I downloaded on my Kobo, and I can't remember what the name of it is, but I'll pop it up on the screen somewhere. But this was a really good story. I gave it 4 stars. The basic premise is that a samurai has been found dead in a bamboo grove, and there were 7 witnesses who are being questioned, and they each have a very different account of how the samurai died. So I thought that was a really fun concept, and it was like really well written and like interesting to read, very cleverly executed. So I would recommend it. It's a very short read. I think it's only like 10 pages long. I'm just gonna bunch these 3 into one talking point. But I read the Paladins of Shannara short series collection by Terry Brooks. I do enjoy the Shannara series by him, and I had bought these a long time ago intending to read them and completely forgot that they existed, so I knocked them all out one after the other over a period of like 2 or 3 hours, but I gave them all 4 stars. If you enjoy the Shannara series, then these are definitely worth the read, as they revisit some of the fun characters from the series, like the Weapon Master's Choice brings back Garrett Jax, and in the Black Erics we hear more about Panama Creole, and those were a couple of my favorites, like some of the standout characters from that series for me. So I would definitely recommend reading these if you're a Shannara fan. I also read Nothing But Blackened Teeth. This is a horror novella by Cassandra Khaw, and I was not feeling this one, so I gave it 2 stars. This is about a group of friends who kind of are hanging out at this spooky, abandoned Japanese mansion, and then things start to get weird. Ordinarily, that would be a premise that I would love. It sounded amazing, but I was just like really disappointed by the narrative. Like the prose was just kind of like heavy-handed. It was kind of all over the place and felt like the author was trying to be clever in how like dense they were making their prose, but really it just kind of bogged the whole story down and just negatively impacted the story overall for me. And I also found the characters to be just completely unbearable. So I was not a fan. Like I said, 2 stars for me, unfortunately. It felt like everyone was talking about this book for a while there, so I had really high expectations. These next books, I'm just going to kind of talk about the series as a whole. This is the Wayward Children series, and I started it at the end of July last year. As you can see, I read the first 3 books like one after the other. I could not get enough of it. The first 2 were 5-star reads for me, and the third one was a 4-star, but they were all like, they're all fantastic. Let's be honest here. These are a series of fantasy novellas. It follows a bunch of teenagers in this world where there are portals to other worlds, and sometimes people as they're living their life, they will find a door that will lead them to a world that is like perfect for them, a world where they fit in and where they belong. And the person can choose to go through the door and continue to live in this new world that they found, or sometimes they might be booted out back to the real world. And this story just kind of follows an orphanage in what I guess would be the real world, where these like sort of rejected children go to live as they wait for their portal to open back up back to their world. Hopefully not all of them get the chance to go back, but it just kind of tells like each of the characters' stories and kind of like digs into their character. I feel like these are all they have plots, but they're mostly like very character driven. The like whole concept of the series I think is just amazing. It is written so well, and you know, it is a really good way to talk about accepting people and being kind to people, and you know, not being judgmental, not pushing people away because you don't necessarily understand them. That's kind of like the core themes in this series is like a lot of these kids are not at home in the world, whether it's because of like family problems or just like, you know, society at large not really accepting them. So there's some really important and relevant themes that are, you know, being discussed using a fantasy setting. So if any of those themes sound interesting to you or relatable in any way, I think this series could kind of feel like, I don't know, like a warm blanket, I guess. That's kind of how, like, even though they are dark and the themes that they cover aren't very, you know, nice all of the time, it does kind of like make you feel seen if you're one of those people that has kind of struggled with acceptance from other people. So definitely recommend this series. As of now, I've read up to book 5, and I'm hoping to get all caught up in the series this year. So you will be hearing more about this series in the future. The next book that I read is Malice House by Megan Shepherd. This was an arc that I got from NetGalley, and I really, really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. The book was about a woman named Haven. She is an artist, and at the beginning of the story is recently divorced. Her father had passed away. I think it was in the like near past, and he left her his house. So after her divorce, she goes to live in the house and finds one of his unfinished manuscripts. He was an author, like a very well-known author. So she decides that it would be really profitable to illustrate this manuscript that she finds, and then publish his work after he has already passed, and then have it kind of be this, you know, father-daughter collaboration from beyond the grave. But as she starts working on it and kind of like clearing out the house and trying to decide what she's going to do with her life, weird things start happening, and she starts to think that maybe there was a reason that this manuscript was never published. Like I said, I really, really liked this book. I thought that it was a lot of fun. It was kind of one of those books where you just kind of like enjoy the ride of it. Like things kind of start to get fucking weird pretty quick, and you're just like holding on and seeing where it goes. So I really, really liked that part of it. It was a little bit bloated at times, but it really didn't like drag the book down too much for me. Like I said, it was 4 stars. It could have been 5 if it wasn't quite so bloated, but this is still like a, you know, high 4-star for me. Also, there were some twists and turns that it took that I did not predict, and I'm always really excited when I can find a book that I can't predict, because usually I can kind of see where a book is going pretty easily, just because I've consumed so many in, you know, so many of the same genres that I can kind of get a hint, I guess, early on where the author is taking the story. I also read We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson, and this is probably going to be one of the unpopular opinions that I have, but I just wasn't really that into it. I gave it 3 stars because Shirley Jackson's prose is amazing. She really knows how to write. I never really feel like I connect with her stories or her characters. I'm always just kind of waiting for them to get to the point, I guess. They kind of feel like they meander a little bit to me. I don't know. But this story is about 2 sisters and their uncle who live in the family home after the mysterious death of the rest of their family. And as we kind of go through the story, we learn what happened to the family, and we also kind of see these sisters being mistreated by the town folk and everything, and it kind of culminates into this big thing. I also read The Night Parade by Ronald Malfi. This was a 4-star read for me. I really, really enjoy Ronald Malfi's characters. He does like a really, really good job in his character work and making you like connect with them and feel for them and everything. But sometimes I kind of feel like his plots sort of take a hit because of that. But honestly, his characters are so good. It's like kind of worth it. And that's how I felt about The Night Parade. This was an apocalyptic horror novel about a man named David and his daughter Ellie. They are on the run as the world is kind of falling apart around them due to this plague that's called Wanderer's Folly that's kind of just taking over and making people do crazy things. And this book had like such a good father-daughter like relationship dynamic. That's kind of like the driving force of the story more than the plot. Like the plague and everything is sort of a backdrop for this relationship, and I really enjoyed it. It gave me feelings at the end, so I would definitely recommend it if you like character-driven stories. As you can see, the next book that I read was Wayward Children #4. I'm not going to talk about the individual books because I don't want to spoil anything, but this was just as worth the read as the other ones so far. Okay, this one's going to hurt some people to hear it, maybe. I know this is kind of an unpopular opinion, but I read My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones, and I did not like it. I think that this, too, was me being kind of generous. I kind of wanted to give it a 1, but I felt like the concepts in this story were worth giving it the extra star. If you have not read this book before, it is about Jade. She is a horror fiend with a particular obsession with slashers. She starts to notice weird things going on in her town, and she is convinced that a slasher situation is about to break out in town, but she's kind of troubled, and everyone in town knows her by this reputation, so it's hard for her to get help from people, and then things kind of go on from there. The premise was super interesting to me. I really liked it. I liked the sound of it. I wanted to love this story, but the way that Stephen Graham Jones writes, I don't know if this is his usual style or if this is just how he chose to write this book, but this kind of stream of conscience, constant inner monologue sort of narrative did not work for me. I felt like it really bloated the book, and it made some things really hard to follow because an event that in the course of the book might take 5 seconds, it's 10 pages of her thinking, overthinking things between walking from one end of the street to the other. So I was not a fan of that. Additionally, while we have this inner monologuing about slashers and making comparisons to slashers and kind of nostalgically discussing slashers and the tropes and stuff like that, we also have these history papers written by Jade that separate the chapters, and they also talk about slasher tropes and like popular slasher movies and stuff. And I kind of felt like there was absolutely no reason to have the the narrative of the story be congested with this kind of hand holding for people who maybe haven't read slashers, but like I don't know, like I'm a little bit confused because it feels like this book is written for people who enjoy slashers, but then it kind of like holds your hand and walks you through the whole concept of a like slasher situation. So I'm not really sure who this book is for, because like I said, you get the hand holding in the narrative, and then you get the hand holding in the form of Jade's papers written to her teacher in between each chapter, and it just did not work for me. There was a lot of really interesting subtext and commentary in this story, but it was just like completely overshadowed by what kind of felt to me to be like nostalgia mining. Like he wanted to bring up all of these different things that people would feel nostalgic about, these different movies, these different characters, and it kind of felt like everything else was lost underneath the whole like, hey look, we're talking about Scream now, hey look over here, we're talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So I just don't really like that form of storytelling, so 2 stars for me, unfortunately. I'm still trying to decide if I want to read any more of his books or not. Get in the comments and let me know, are all of his books like this, or do you recommend that I go ahead and try some other ones out? Thanks. Okay, this next book that I'm going to be talking about is amazing, and I cannot believe that I don't see more people on BookTube talking about this author. This is Songs of a Dead Dreamer and Grimscribe by Thomas Ligotti. I think that's how you say his name. I'm not 100%. This was a 5-star read for me. Literally like a perfect horror short story collection. Like, in my opinion, this had everything that I wanted out of it. I am obsessed. It is so good. The author is just amazing at cultivating these like spooky atmospheres, this like atmosphere of dread, all of this tension. He is like so good at like creepy imagery and everything, just like a really, really good writer. This is actually an edition that has 2 of his short story collections. One would be Songs of a Dead Dreamer, and the other is Grimscribe. And they were both like fantastic. They were so good. These collections gave me weird dreams. Like, that doesn't happen very often. I'm not really one of those people that like dreams about everything that I'm into, so like I don't read horror and then have nightmares all the time or anything. But this one, it gave me some like almost nightmares, but mostly they were just these weird surreal dreams that like felt like his weird surreal way of writing. But I actually had this described to me as cosmic horror, which is what made me want to read it in the first place. But really, I feel like it's kind of more like existential horror or something. Okay, I actually went and grabbed my copy real quick because I thought that like I could read you an excerpt or something real quick just to kind of show the way that he writes. So I'm just going to try to make it real quick. Just so is she attired when the glitter-browed villain peers in her apartment window, accursing the casement in her dreams. What can she do but shrink with terror? Soon she's only doll size in a dark doll's costume. Quivering bones and feverish blood are the stuffings of this doll, its entrails tickled by Feather's funereal plume. It flies to a corner of the room and cringes within enormous shadows, sometimes dreaming there throughout the night of carriage wheels rioting in a lavender mist or a pearly fog, of nacreous fires twitching beyond the margins of country roads, of cliffs and stars. And like, bruh. He just has this like weird, like dreamy way of writing about things. It makes you feel like you are in someone's like fever dream, but it is really, really good. I really, really recommend this collection. He came across my radar because someone that I'm friends with on Goodreads had rated that collection, and I kind of like bought it on a whim at the local bookstore when I saw it, just because I was like, I have a good feeling about this. And this is one of the times that like following my intuition kind of paid off, because that is seriously one of my favorite authors now. I cannot wait to get my hands on some of his other story collections. And the next book I want to talk about is by another one of my favorites. This is Children of the Fang and Other Genealogies by John Langan. I love John Langan. The Fisherman is one of my favorite books ever. It is just so good. I feel like when I read John Langan stories, like, I don't know, it's like we both live on the same like wavelength when it comes to horror. So when he writes something, I'm just like, that was written for me to read it, which I know it's not, like, clearly, but it feels like we're on the same page as far as like horror. So this one I gave 4 stars to. It was just like a really good collection of weird and cosmic horror. There were, some other stories in there. I think that this is the kind of collection where you can probably find something for everybody. So yeah, I would really recommend it. I think that he just recently had another collection come out, but this one is the second to last collection that he wrote. So highly recommend. I also got an arc of Daphne by Josh Malerman, and I really liked this one. This was a 4-star read for me, as you can see. I have got to get a physical copy for my shelf because I need it. It was so good. This is a horror novel. It follows a group of teenagers who kind of start dying as rumors spread about this local woman who has become kind of an urban legend. And that's all I'm going to tell you, because I feel like it's the kind of thing where you want to experience it for yourself. So I could not put this book down. It was like really compelling, especially like the first couple chapters will like really grab you and not let you go. There was a lot of really good like mental health representation. The main character, Kit, kind of has anxiety issues, and as someone who also has like generalized anxiety, I could really relate to the things that she was struggling with, so I really liked seeing that. Additionally, just all of the characters were really well written, and I liked to kind of see them being explored and like see their lives and their struggles and everything. But man, did this book have some brutal shit in it. There were some scenes where I was like, oh, bro, why would you do that? But like in the best way, like so good and awful. The only thing that like knocked this down from a 5-star read to 4 for me was that the ending was just kind of a little disappointing, I guess. I just wasn't really satisfied with how it played out, but this is still like a high 4-star read for me. This is like 4.5 stars. If I had to be like more specific, so definitely worth the read. I also got myself a copy of the BuzzFeed Unsolved Supernatural 101 True Tales of Hauntings, Demons, and the Paranormal. I actually got the audiobook because it's got Ryan and Shane in it, for some of it, like narrating. I really like Ryan and Shane, like, as people. I've watched like all of the BuzzFeed Unsolved stuff with them in it, and now I watch a lot of their content that they post on Watcher and stuff. But this audiobook was I gave it 4 stars. It was good, but it just kind of felt like I was getting these bite-sized, not as fun versions of just like BuzzFeed Unsolved episodes. So it's worth it if you already like them, but I don't know if it's going to be very satisfying, at least the audiobook. I don't know if the audiobook will be very satisfying to people who don't already know who they are and like them. But I could see, especially if you're somebody who likes to go investigate supposedly haunted locations and stuff, I could see a physical copy of this being really fun to own. Okay, this next book we're going to take some time to talk about because I absolutely loved it. This is Little Eve by Catriona Ward. I got an arc of this and I loved it. Oh my god, I gave it 5 stars. I love Catriona Ward anyway. I will forever read whatever she comes out with. She is just amazing. She will write some shit that will grab your brain and twist it into all these like pretzel shapes that it should not take, and you're just gonna be like, yes, thank you, can I have another? This book is best consumed knowing as little as possible. So I'm just gonna like read you the summary that I put in my review. On the Isle of Altnahara, Uncle and his young acolytes await the coming of him, the snake from the sea. That is all you want to know about this book. It was just absolutely mind-blowing the way that this whole thing played out. It really like stuck with me. I was like finding as many ways as I could to like sneak in a little more reading time so that I could get as much time with this book as possible. And when I wasn't reading it, I was thinking about it, just constantly like turning the pieces over in my head, you know, thinking about whatever it was that I had just read and how fucked up it was. It was like so messed up, but in the best way, in the way that we know that only Catriona Ward can do it. So especially if you already like her, I would recommend this. But even if you've never read any of her stuff before, this is a good place to start. This kind of encapsulates what is great about her all in, you know, one book. I also read The Phantom Prince, My Life with Ted Bundy by Elizabeth Kendall. I didn't rate it because this is a memoir. Elizabeth Kendall is the woman who was dating Ted Bundy when he was caught. And this book was kind of just a huge trauma dump of all of the stuff that she dealt with being in a relationship with, you know, this guy. I just didn't really feel comfortable rating it because of this, but it's definitely worth the read. If you are interested in true crime or, you know, like reading about like firsthand accounts of serial killers and stuff, you do have to like remember that this book is kind of through her lens. So there are like some things in it that are kind of, I don't know, you read them and you're kind of like, girl, what are you thinking? You know, but I think that it was worth the read. I hesitate to say that I enjoyed it. Like, there was a lot of interesting things in it, a lot of interesting things brought up about Ted Bundy that I did not know. So it was enlightening, I guess. Like I said, worth the read if you're into true crime. I also read The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. This was a really good read. I gave it 4 stars. It's like an urban fantasy, I would say. Basically, it's about a man who is sent to investigate an orphanage that houses these magical youth, and he's kind of like investigating them because they're supposed to be like particularly dangerous. And then also their caretaker, because there have been some like questions brought up as to his ability to take care of these children. So it's actually a very wholesome story. It follows like, or it contains these really like nice themes of, you know, not judging people based on how they look or, you know, like your preconceived notions of them, you know, like being accepting of people and stuff like that. Just like really nice themes and everything. And that's actually what kind of kept me from giving it 5 stars, is that I felt like it was a little bit shallow in its exploration of these themes. It's supposed to be like more of a feel-good book, so I get that it, you know, he wanted to kind of keep it lighter than something like the Wayward Children series. So like I actually feel like the themes that are covered in The House in the Cerulean Sea are very similar to what's covered in the Wayward Children series, but where she approaches it kind of a little like deeper, where she looks at like the good things about accepting people for who they are, but then also what happens when people are not accepting. You know, she looks at the good and the bad, and it's like a much deeper exploration of these themes. But like I said, The House in the Cerulean Sea is meant to be lighter. It's meant to be like, you know, warm and comforting. So I understand why he kind of kept it a little more shallow. But if you like The House in the Cerulean Sea, I would recommend reading Wayward Children. I also read Gallant by V.E. Schwab. This actually is one that I would not have read like knowing what I know now. It was my understanding that V.E. Schwab writes her adult books under the name V.E. Schwab and her YA books under Victoria Schwab, but this felt way more YA than I was expecting, and I'm not really a huge fan of YA, which I know I'm over here seeing the praises of Wayward Children, which a lot of people consider YA. And now going, I don't actually like it that much. Like, Wayward Children is an exception to the rule. So I gave it 3 stars though. Like it was all right. It just wasn't what I was expecting, I guess. It's a kind of fantasy mystery novel about this girl named Olivia. She is an orphan and she doesn't really have anything to remember her past except her mother's old journal. She's currently, like at the start of the book, living in a school for girls and she doesn't really fit in. She actually is mute, so there's actually some really interesting representation there, and as a character I thought that like she was really fun. I liked that she was kind of like sassy and she didn't like let people tell her what to do and everything. But she gets a letter from her family calling her home, to a home that she like didn't realize that she had. So like I said, great representation in this novel. She, like, Olivia was a really interesting character, but while the book started out great, it kind of like fizzled out about halfway through and never did pick back up again, at least not for me. Somehow I got to the end of the book and I was like, that's all? Why does this book not feel finished? Like, why do I feel like it's not done? And I don't know if that means that she's leaving it open for a sequel, but I just, I felt like there were, I don't know, it just didn't wrap up in a satisfying way, and I felt like there had to have been a better way to do that. So 3 stars. I guess I would recommend it if you already like V.E. Schwab and you are also a fan of YA, but just don't expect it to live up to some of the other books that she writes. Okay, I'm really excited to talk about this next one. This is Poems Bewitched and Haunted. It is actually a collection of poetry, and I give it 5 stars. It is just full of all of these poems that are about spooky things. I actually went and got my copy so I could show you just how cute it is. It is amazing with all these little like pumpkins and stuff on it, and then it comes with like the little ribbon. Oh my god, so cute. But I bought this and then I read it throughout September and October in celebration of Spooky Month. So that is how I would recommend reading this because it is so worth it. All of the poems are separated into different categories. So there's like hags, dangerous procedures, dangerous venues, other apparitions, a choice of ghosts, and the lighter side. So some kind of like comedy, spooky stuff. But I would highly recommend. I actually got another poetry collection by this same like distributor or this same publisher. So I will definitely be reading more collections like this in the future. And it's always kind of been my intention to maybe do some poetry readings on my channel. So y'all let me know if that's something that you would be interested in, because I would absolutely love to do that. The next book that I read was Sour Candy by Keelan Patrick Burke. This was a really surprisingly good novella. I gave it 5 stars. I don't know why I say that it's surprising. I guess just because it's so short and everything. And look at the average rating is only 3.72 stars, so I wasn't expecting much. I just thought it was going to be a fun, good time, but no, I absolutely loved it. This is like a cosmic horror novella, and I don't want to tell you very much because it is very short, but basically a man meets a child at the grocery store. Yeah, that is what the story is about. It was amazing. I loved every second that I spent with it, and I read it all in one go in like 2 hours. The atmosphere was amazing, and the writing was just so good. I loved it. I actually have my copy here, so if this first line doesn't convince you to read it, then I don't know what will. But this is seriously like, if I made a video of like the best first lines in a book, this would be one of them. 4 months to the day he encountered the boy at Walmart. The last of Phil Pendleton's teeth fell out. Like, bro, what? So, yes, I would really, really recommend that one. Like I said, it's super short, so you got nothing to lose if you can, get a copy of it somewhere. Very good. 5 stars. Definitely check it out. I also read Blackmouth by Ronald Malfi. This is a coming-of-age horror, which is one of my favorite types of horror as well. I gave it 4 stars. It was pretty good. I kept hearing it compared to It, and while It was kind of like an upper 4-star, like I would say It was probably like 4.75 stars for me. Blackmouth was like lower. It was probably just a straight 4-star rating. Basically what it is about is a group of friends reunite as adults to face a monster from their childhoods. So you can pretty clearly see why it was compared to It. Kind of the whole point of the story, it felt like to me, it was to pay homage to other coming of age stories, but it just didn't really hit as well as I had hoped. There were a lot of parts where it just kind of dragged, but even though plot-wise I wasn't that impressed, I did like some of the characters. It was worth it to kind of see their story play out, and even though they weren't necessarily likable characters, they were still interesting. So while I would not compare this book to It, I can see like people who enjoy It also potentially enjoying this read as well. I also read You Should Have Left by Daniel Kelman. This is a horror novella, and I gave it 4 stars. So I really wish that I had read this one sooner because it ended up being really good. It's about a man and his family who have rented a home in the mountains. I think it was in Germany, and things start to get really weird. I've heard people compare this book to House of Leaves, and I can see why they would, but it's kind of like a much lighter House of Leaves. I really, really liked it. At first, I was kind of like a little bit hesitant because it has a rough start, but it picked up really quick and like sunk its hooks in me, so I could not put it down. I read it all in one go. Very spooky. Would recommend. I shouldn't say read. I also listened to The Watcher in the Rain by Alec Worley. This is actually a audio drama that takes place in the 40K universe. My husband is really big into 40K, so he listened to this first, and then he was like, please listen to this. It's horror. You'll love it. And actually, I did really like it. I gave it 4 stars. I don't really know how to tell you what it's about. I'm just going to tell you there's something in the rain, and we'll leave it there. It was a really good production. There were some very spooky vibes. I was surprised that I liked it so much because I'm not very familiar with 40K lore, and he told me, like, you don't really have to know very much to be able to enjoy this, and I found that to be true. So, if you like 40K, if you play, or if you're just interested in the lore, this is worth a listen. I also read The Hole by, I'm not great at Korean names, but hye-young. And this was a 3-star read for me. This is, I don't really even know what to call it. It was kind of, I've seen it described as horror, but it was kind of more literary for me. But it is a novella. It is about a man named Ogi who was in a car accident and is bedridden, and he has to rely on his mother-in-law to take care of him, even as things start to kind of get more and more unhinged around him. I just wasn't really feeling the characters in this. It was kind of a situation of everyone is terrible and there's not really anyone to get behind, and like sometimes I'm okay with that, but with this one, I don't know, I wasn't really feeling it. So moving on. I also read Quidditch Through the Ages. This is one of those like Hogwarts library books where it just kind of like gives you more Harry Potter lore in a textbook from the main series. So it was 3 stars. It was good. It was fun. And I read Fairy Tale by Stephen King. This was a 4-star read for me, like a high 4-star read. This is a fantasy book. It is about our main character, Charlie, and he offers to take care of a reclusive neighbor after the neighbor has had an accident and is kind of not as mobile as he needs to be. He also has a dog named Radar, and Charlie offers to take care of the dog as well. And honestly, that's the most important part of the story, is the dog. She is amazing. You will love her. I loved her anyway. But yeah, this was a great read. I really loved the first half of it, and especially like the characters and watching their relationships grow, like watching Charlie and the neighbor Howard become closer and watching Charlie bond with Radar. It was just like so nice and wholesome and sweet. It was just great. The story paid homage to a lot of fairy tales and classic stories, so I really enjoyed that. I love, like in case you couldn't tell by the name, I'm sure everyone could just assume that it was based on fairy tales. Anyway, I love fairy tales, so I was really excited when I saw the title of this when it was announced. I was like, oh, that I have to read that one as soon as possible. My only real complaint with it is that the last half kind of went flat for a little bit, and it was just not as compelling as the rest of it was, but it kind of recovered before the end, and I felt like it sort of was tied up nicely. So yeah, like I said, high 4-star rating for me. I would definitely recommend this one. Oh my god, this was one of my favorites of the year. I have literally not stopped thinking about it since I read it. I literally just told my husband yesterday, as soon as I can get my hands on a physical copy, which for some reason has been really hard lately, that we're reading it together. But this is Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. This was a 5-star read. It was amazing. Absolute perfect book for me. Like, this is seriously perfection. It had great characters, it had an interesting story, and it had animal companions, like really good animal companions. I even liked the romance that kind of slowly built up in this book. So I don't read romance, and most of the time I don't even care about romance subplots. So when I actually cared about this, I was like, oh my god, this is like the perfect book. This story follows a woman named Mara, and she is on a quest to save her sister from the abusive prince that she was forced to marry. And that's all I'm really going to tell you about that, because, that really is the core of the story, but there's so much more to it that's like just kind of fun to discover for yourself. So would 100% recommend this book. Did I already say it's like a dark fantasy, and it also kind of has references and stuff to fairy tales as well. So just overall a really great read. By the time you get to the end of it, you will want either a bone dog or a demon possessed chicken. It'll make sense when you read it. I also finally got around to reading The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. This had been on my want to read shelf. Oh, there it is, for a long time, since 2014. So I really liked it. It was a 4-star read. This is a classic, so I don't know if there is anyone who has never heard of this before, but for those of you who haven't, it is a sci-fi novella about a man who builds a time machine and travels through time. It's not very long, so I don't want to tell you more than that, but it was a really interesting read. I had fun with it, so I would recommend it. I also read Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Basterica, and this was a 4-star read for me. I think that this has kind of been on everybody's radar. I saw a lot of people talking about it. This is a horror novel about a man named Marcos who is in upper management at this processing plant. An epidemic in the near past kind of infected all animals, and the government decided to just mass purge all animals. So once the animals are slaughtered, it leads to this food crisis, and clearly there is only one remedy to this problem. Do you want to guess what it is? Government-sanctioned cannibalism. So that is what this book is about. We kind of explore this world through Marcos' eyes, and it's actually a really interesting character study, while also just being a very disgusting and gutting read. There are a lot of really interesting concepts being played with and some commentary being made. It was really good, but also very bleak, very disturbing, very gory. So while I would recommend it if you think that you can handle that, definitely check and trigger warnings and make sure that this is going to be something you'll want to actually consume. I read A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This was a 4-star read for me. It's about Kel. He is a messenger that can travel between parallel worlds, and he kind of smuggles on the side. It's supposed to be illegal to bring items from one world to another, but he does it anyway, and it gets him into some trouble. This is a dark fantasy. It was really fun. I loved the world building and the characters. It was just a really good adventure. I would definitely recommend it, and I can't wait to continue the series. I already have the second book waiting, so I'm hoping to hit that pretty soon. So great starter for a fantasy series, would recommend. And I read Mr. Gaunt and Other Uneasy Encounters by John Langan. Like I said, he is one of my favorites. So this was a 4-star read for me. Mr. Gaunt is actually his very first short story collection, I'm pretty sure, and it was out of print until last year. So this is the new edition. As soon as it came out, I ordered it. But it was really, really good. It came with a new story at the end because it is a new edition and it had been out of print for so long, but just full of weird horror and a lot of fun stories based on kind of reimaginings of the usual horror staples. There is a story about a skeleton, just a skeleton, but in the best way. And then also a reimagining of zombies and stuff. And one thing that I really like about John Langan's short story collections is there's story notes at the end of each book, and it's really fun to look and see how each story kind of came to be, how he came up with the ideas and how he developed it and everything. So would definitely recommend this collection. It was so good. I read Animal Farm by George Orwell. This was a 5-star read for me. This is a classic, so I don't really know who doesn't already know about it, but in case you haven't heard, it is about an animal uprising on this farm. Results in the humans kind of being driven from the farm, and the abused animals kind of start to dream of a utopia for themselves, and they try to kind of build this future, but does not work out. It's actually a pretty depressing book to read. It's great. It's well written. There's a lot of really delicious satire in there. Just rough to get through, though. Hurt my feelings. Okay, the last one that I'm going to talk about is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I know that I said earlier I don't really like to rate memoirs, but I did go ahead and rate this one just because while there was a lot of trauma dumping in here, it kind of felt more appropriate to rate this one just because she was so like brave and honest and so articulate in tackling these like things that happened to her. It was really hard to read, and there was a lot of really difficult subject matter, but she's like clearly rising through it all, and that was why I decided to go ahead and rate it and give it 5 stars. I don't want to say it was a good read in the sense of like I enjoyed it, but like it was eye-opening. It calls to light a lot of problems in the child star, industry. Definitely worth the read for sure. And these last books are the ones that I read in December, which I already talked about in my December wrap-up video. So I've already linked that. I will do it again up here somewhere. So check that out if you want to see what I read in December. Okay, everyone. We made it. We did it. All 91 books that I read in 2022, we have looked at them. I have blabbered about them. Thank you so much for your patience and your willingness to watch these videos. I will probably never do this again because I'm planning on keeping track of all of my reads from here on out on YouTube. So no more hour-long videos, hopefully. Did you guys read any of the books that we talked about today, or are you interested now in checking them out? Get in the comments and let me know. Next week, I'm going to have a video where I talk about what I read in January. So if you're interested in that, then come back and pay me a visit. I hope to see you there. Bye.